It begins on a night so still it feels like the world itself is holding its breath. The call comes through just before midnight, a voice trembling, hurried, claiming someone has broken into a home. Dispatchers trace the line. Dispatch units mark the time. 11:42 p.m. Nothing about it seems unusual until the first responders arrive. The front door is ajar, the lights are on, and inside the house, a body lies sprawled in the living room. The air hums with electricity, an aftertaste of panic and violence. But when the recording is replayed, the voice on the tape, the desperate whisper asking for help, doesn't match the victims. In that instant, the ordinary fracture of a suburban night becomes something else entirely. A riddle whispered into the dark, a voice that doesn't belong to the dead, and an echo that refuses to fade. The detective stands in the doorway, her breath faint in the chill. She's seen death before, brutal, senseless, but this one hums with something rehearsed. The scene feels deliberate, almost theatrical in its precision. She orders the recording to be played again. The sound fills the room, shaking something deep in her chest. The voice trembles at the edges, caught between fear and performance. Every syllable feels calculated, the panic rehearsed. Rain taps against the glass like a metronome, counting down the seconds between truth and illusion. When the voice stops, the silence it leaves behind feels heavier than the sound itself. The coroner's report confirms the detective's instincts. No signs of forced entry, no defensive wounds. The victim wasn't fighting for his life. He was taken off guard. The living room tells a story of routine. Coffee cup on the table, jacket draped over the chair, interrupted by something cold and precise. As others sweep for evidence, the detective studies the clock on the mantel, stopped at the exact moment of the call. It feels like time itself paused to record the lie. Somewhere in the static of that 911 tape, the truth waits, mechanical, deliberate, and patient. In the audio lab, the recording plays again, filtered, stretched, and slowed. Each manipulation reveals new distortions, breaths out of sync, pauses to deliberate. Beneath the words, a low hum emerges, like machinery running in another room. The technician glances at the detective, uncertainty flickering behind tired eyes. They both hear it. The voice isn't natural. It's built, a thing assembled from fragments. Whoever made it wanted to create fear, not express it. The realization settles in the air like dust. Someone called for help, but not because they were in danger. They wanted danger to be found. The storm has passed by the time she returns to the house. The night smells of wet asphalt and wood smoke, the kind of silence that follows after something has broken. She stands in the doorway where it began, listening to the faint hum of the streetlights, remembering the voice. It wasn't a plea. It was a message. Somewhere beyond the quiet suburban lawns, someone is listening still, waiting for the next sound. And as the dawn bleeds through the clouds, she feels it. The echo of a crime built not from violence, but from sound itself. Morning breaks in shades of pale gray, the kind of light that drains warmth from everything it touches. The detective hasn't slept. The recording loops in her mind, each second, peeling back another layer of deception. At headquarters, the incident board fills with printouts and photographs. The house, the call log, the waveform frozen mid-scream. The captain wants results, but what she needs is truth, and truth doesn't follow protocol. Every piece of evidence points in two directions at once. A voice begging for help, and a silence that tells another story. She listens again to that final breath before the line goes dead, and she knows what everyone else refuses to say aloud. Whoever made that call never wanted to be found. The investigation stretches into the afternoon. Rain streaks the windows while officers move like ghosts through the halls. The detective studies the recording again, her fingers tracing the jagged lines of sound on the monitor. Each voice inflection feels wrong, too controlled. as if choreographed. She sends the audio for deeper analysis, spectrum mapping, pitch tracking, and noise layering. Somewhere within those frequencies lies intention. She leans closer, hearing a faint, rhythmic tapping behind the caller's voice. It isn't random. It's patterned, deliberate, almost like someone counting. She presses stop and whispers to no one. He wanted us to hear this. By evening, the trace results come in. The call didn't originate from the victim's house. It was routed through a voice relay system, bouncing across multiple servers before reaching dispatch. Someone went to extraordinary lengths to mask their location. The captain calls it a dead end. The detective calls it an opening. She stares at the map projected across the wall. Dozens of red lines converging into static, and feels a cold certainty sink in. This wasn't about hiding. It was about being heard. Every bounce, every layer, every distortion was designed to draw attention to itself. The message was never about the break-in. It was the call itself. That night, the detective visits the victim's home again, this time alone. The tape recorder sits on the evidence table, silent but charged with presence. She walks through each room. The smell of cleaning solvent still fresh, the silence too absolute. Every object feels misplaced, arranged to suggest chaos, but lacking true disorder. The living room, the hallway, the bedroom, all untouched by struggle. She kneels near the phone outlet where faint marks line the wall. Someone had unplugged it, then plugged it back in. A performance of panic. She closes her eyes. And in the darkness behind them, she can still hear that voice echoing like a memory that doesn't belong to anyone. Back at headquarters, the analyst finishes isolating background noise from the recording. Layer by layer, the distortion peels away, until only a soft hum remains. It's mechanical, maybe electrical. But beneath it, something else surfaces. A heartbeat. Not metaphorical, but real, biological, recorded, close to a microphone. Someone made that call holding a device to their chest. The realization cracks the air open like thunder. The detective stands silent as the truth lands heavy. The caller wasn't reporting a crime. They were confessing to one. The following morning dawns washed out and colorless, a sky the shade of old paper. The detective's desk is buried under files, every sheet marked by the same anomaly. A voice that doesn't belong to the victim. She stares at them like puzzle pieces from different lives, each one whispering the same message. When the analyst cross-references archived calls, something impossible emerges. Identical sound signatures, identical tremors in tone, identical patterns of fear. The same voice has appeared in other 911 calls over the past 6 months, each tied to a different death. It's not a glitch, it's design. Someone has been building panic, one call at a time. And somewhere in the frequencies between those cries for help, a story is being written. In sound, not blood. By midday, the case has shifted from murder to message. The detective listens to the archived calls one by one. Each begins with the same panicked worry. Each begins with the same panicked rhythm. A short inhale, a half-second pause, then the plea. Different names, different addresses, same voice. It's like hearing a ghost rehearsing the same tragedy in different rooms. The analyst isolates the background hum again, and within it, faint clicks, timestamps from recording software. Whoever made these calls wasn't improvising. They were producing. She writes a single word across her notepad. Engineered. It's no longer about who died. It's about who composed the sound of dying. Hours later, the investigation takes a new turn. The analyst traces the audio anomalies to a narrow frequency band, equipment too sophisticated for casual use. Only someone trained in sound manipulation could craft it. The detective pulls up city records and finds a list of registered audio technicians. One name repeats across several old case files. A consultant once hired to clean evidence tapes, later dismissed for tampering. The pieces begin to align with surgical precision. The calls weren't random. They were rehearsals, each one more confident than the last. And the final performance ended with a dead man on the floor. The name belongs to a man who once made his living cleaning up other people's voices, filtering out lies, smoothing over noise, erasing mistakes. Now, he's the noise itself. The detective stares at his photograph in silence, the faint grain of the image making him appear half real, half remembered. A sound engineer capable of rebuilding identity from fragments of tape, vanishing between frequencies like a ghost in the system. The more she listens, the clearer it becomes. The killer isn't hiding in the silence. He's speaking through it. Each manipulated call is a signature, a message carved into airwaves. He's not covering his tracks, he's composing them. Night falls again, heavy and electric. The detective sits alone in her car outside the old industrial district where the technician once worked. The building looms ahead, boarded windows, metal doors sealed with rust. In her earpiece, the analyst's voice hums with static as she feeds coordinates through the line. Somewhere inside that abandoned studio, a voice once lived, and maybe still does. She closes her eyes and listens. The faint hum of power lines, the whisper of wind through cracked glass. And underneath it all, a pulse she can't explain. It's not in the environment, it's in the airwaves. He's already speaking to her, waiting for her to listen. The warehouse is colder than she expects. Dust and silence mingle in the air, heavy as sleep. The detective moves carefully through the dark, her flashlight cutting narrow paths through the ruin. Rusted equipment lies in tangled heaps, mixers, cables, old microphones still strung to dead outlets. Each step echoes like a breath caught between frequencies. She feels the weight of unseen eyes, the echo of something recently alive. On a desk near the back, a laptop hums faintly, screen flickering with waveforms still in motion. The timestamp reads 11:42 p.m. on Darned. The same minute every call began. She doesn't touch it, she just listens. The faint loop playing through the speakers is the same voice from the 911 tape. Identical, except this one laughs between words. The lab confirms what her gut already knew. The voice is manufactured, sculpted from dozens of recordings stitched together with digital precision. Every vowel, every quiver of fear is sampled from different people, a human patchwork of terror. The analyst maps its components like DNA strands, tracing fragments back to archived distress calls, podcasts, even old police interviews. The result forms a single, impossible truth. The killer doesn't just imitate fear. He steals it. Each call is an imitation of life built from the echoes of real voices long gone. The detective realizes she's not hunting a murderer. She's chasing a man who believes he can create people out of sound. The technician's file reads like a confession written in plain sight. Disciplinary notes, unfiled patents, reports of experimental software that could replicate human intonation with disturbing realism. He once bragged in an interview about capturing emotion better than people could feel it themselves. The detective plays the interview on her phone, listening as his calm voice describes sound as a language for ghosts. She rewinds, plays it again. The cadence, the slight rasp, the same breath pattern as the 911 call. He didn't just leave clues behind. He embedded himself in his own creation. Every voice she's heard, every scream and plea, carries his signature beneath the surface like a fingerprint carved in static. When the detective finally finds his former studio, it's not abandoned like the first, it's preserved. Cables coil neatly along the walls. Monitors glow with ambient light, and on the central desk sits a reel-to-reel recorder, still spinning in endless loop. The walls are lined with acoustic foam, each piece pierced by dozens of thumbtacks holding photographs, victims, phone records, fragments of scripts. Each call was rehearsed, each death timed to a recording. The room smells of iron and ozone, the ghost of heat from machinery still running. She approaches the reel, presses stop, and the tape unwinds with a sigh, revealing her own voice whispering through the silence. "Please, help me." The air feels alive when she steps outside, wind pushing through broken glass like a living thing. The city beyond the warehouse hums faintly, every sound now suspect. A car engine, a siren, even her own breath. Back in her car, she plays the tape again, this time listening for what isn't there. No echo, no space. The recording was made inside the same studio she just left. He's been here recently, maybe still nearby. A shadow moves across the opposite rooftop, vanishing into the mist before she can react. Her pulse aligns with the hum of the tape. The line between listening and being heard begins to blur, and for the first time she feels the presence not of a killer, but of someone watching, waiting, recording her. The detective hasn't been home in 3 days. Her desk is a maze of waveform prints, red thread maps, and sleepless coffee stains. The sound engineer's name echoes in every report, but his body remains a ghost. What remains of his presence are the tapes, hundreds of them, recovered from the studio, each one labeled with a date and a single word. Breath, cry, silence, confess. One of them is different. No timestamp, no name, just the faint outline of a fingerprint smudged across the label. When she presses play, the sound that fills the room isn't a scream. It's her own voice, steady and calm, reading an address she's never been to before. The tape clicks to a stop. The address still hangs in her mind like a whispered dare. The address leads her to a derelict house on the city's edge, a place that feels forgotten even by the wind. She moves through rooms still heavy with dust, her flashlight brushing against walls, lined with blank tape boxes. Every corner hums with the faintest resonance, as if sound itself has memory here. In the center of the living room sits an old tape recorder, plugged into the wall and waiting. She presses play, and her own voice speaks again, not from the machine, but from the house itself, reverberating from hidden speakers. The walls answer her in perfect imitation. Each time she whispers, "Who are you?" The house whispers back, "You are." The analyst's voice crackles through the radio, urgent. The house's power source is drawing from a remote transmitter linked to the old studio grid. Someone is still controlling the feed. The detective's pulse races as she scans the walls. Microphones embedded beneath cracked plaster, tiny red lights blinking faintly like watchful eyes. Then, the recording shifts. The voice on the tape isn't hers anymore. It's his. Calm, deliberate, almost tender. He thanks her for finding him, for listening, for proving that sound can live beyond flesh. His words carry no threat, only certainty. The first step, he says, was to make them believe I was dead. The second is to make you remember me. The line ends with static that hums like breath. Back at headquarters, the analyst isolates the latest transmission. It's a live recording, not playback. He's speaking through pre-recorded layers in real time, weaving her voice and his into one. Each line she's spoken since the case began, every command, every whisper, has been captured and reassembled to answer her. The calls weren't random, and neither was the first one. He's been recording her from the start. As realization settles in, the detective feels the ground shift beneath her. The voice on the newest file says her name. Then silence. When she asks the analyst to replay it, the system responds with a single error message. Source unavailable. That night, she sits alone in her apartment, lights off, phone unplugged, every noise dissected in her mind. The case has dissolved into echoes, the difference between listening and remembering no longer clear. On the table before her lies a small recorder, the same model used in every tape she's found. Its red light blinks once, though she never pressed record. Her own voice plays back softly from the speaker. "Do you hear it?" A pause. Then his voice answers, "I always did." The tape stops, but the light doesn't. It blinks again, and again. Somewhere, in a room she can't see, someone is still listening, and the sound of her breath is no longer her own. Morning creeps through the blinds like a confession unwilling to be heard. The detective hasn't slept. She sits amid layers of transcripts, every word she's spoken since the first night printed and marked with timestamps. The analyst insists the transmissions were reconstructed from her voice, clipped syllables, reassembled, looped. A conversation she never consented to have. She realizes the killer's greatest creation isn't imitation, it's participation. He's been turning her into his co-narrator, writing her into his recordings in real time. The air hums with quiet dread as she whispers to herself, testing the sound. Somewhere, faint and delayed, her voice whispers back. The breakthrough comes unexpectedly. The analyst discovers that each 911 recording contains faint background ambience from the same location. The hum of industrial power lines, the distant echo of trains, and the rhythmic ticking of a loose fan blade. They match a single warehouse complex on the outskirts of town, long condemned but still drawing power. The detective drives there before dusk, rain streaking across her windshield. Every instinct tells her it's a trap, but the need for resolution outweighs fear. She turns off the engine, and in the sudden silence, the hum from the tapes surrounds her. Real, alive, coming from somewhere inside. She enters the warehouse, flashlight trembling across the walls. The interior has changed. No decay, no dust. Everything meticulously arranged like a stage. Cables wind toward a central console, speakers positioned in a perfect circle. On each sits a reel labeled with dates from her investigation. The detective's voice echoes from one, then another, overlapping until the air is thick with her own words. She moves closer and finds a camera mounted on a tripod, pointed directly at the center of the circle. A light blinks on top. Recording. The realization freezes her. This isn't a hideout, it's a reconstruction. Someone is restaging every moment of her pursuit. The voice returns, smooth and deliberate, filling the room through the speakers. He tells her this is where every sound began. Every breath, every plea, every death turned into melody. He wanted her to find him, to listen closely enough to recognize herself in the pattern. The lights flicker, and the recordings blend. Victims' voices, her own, his, merging into one continuous confession. She realizes what he's built. A living archive, a self-sustaining loop that survives as long as it's heard. If she destroys it, the evidence vanishes. If she listens, she becomes part of it. The choice feels like stepping between silence and immortality. Or in intruder. She approaches the console, her hand hovering over the power switch. The voice shifts, no longer external, but inside her earpiece. It thanks her by name, telling her that without her, none of it would exist. The circuits hum, and her reflection stares back from the black glass monitor, overlaid with his face, their voices now indistinguishable. She breathes once, deeply, then cuts the power. The sound collapses instantly. No echo, no trace, only silence, so total it feels alive. Outside, dawn begins to rise. For a moment, the world is still again, but she can't shake the sense that somewhere, deep inside that silence, the recording continues, waiting for someone new to press play. The following morning feels hollow, as though the world itself is playing back an old recording. The warehouse is sealed, its power cut, yet the silence inside carries weight. The echo of a sound that refuses to die. The detective files her report, every line clinical, detached, but her hand trembles as she writes. The analyst insists the source signal stopped completely after the shutdown, but both know that absence doesn't mean death. The voice had become part of the system, encoded in its loops, embedded in her memory. She dreams in static now, faint whispers threading through her sleep, calling her by name, asking her to listen just one last time. Days pass, and life pretends to resume its rhythm. The city hums. Cases come and go. But the detective feels the absence like a phantom limb. She hears fragments of the killer's cadence in strangers' voices, finds herself checking her phone for messages that never arrive. Late one night, she drives past the river and stops to watch the reflection of bridge lights tremble on the water. The breeze carries a faint pulse of sound, almost imagined, a low hum that feels too deliberate to be chance. She closes her eyes. For a moment, it sounds like a heartbeat. Then, a voice so soft it barely exists. You ended the loop, but you never stopped listening. The analyst calls her 2 days later. Something's wrong. A new file appeared on the department's internal server. Unmarked, untraceable. Its title, Playback. The detective's pulse steadies as she listens over the line. It's her own voice, calm, recounting details from the warehouse investigation, word for word. But there's something new beneath it. A second voice, faint, repeating each line half a second later. Perfect sync, perfect mimicry. Perfect mimicry. The analyst insists the file wasn't created internally. It was uploaded remotely. Someone, or something, is still transmitting. The detective ends the call without speaking. For the first time, she doesn't know whether she's being watched or remembered. Night again. The detective returns to her apartment. She places the recorder on the table. Same one that blinked red weeks before, and waits. The silence stretches thin. Then, a click. The tape reels turn without command, the speaker whispering fragments of every voice she's ever heard in this case. Victims, dispatchers, the killer, even her own. They merge into one impossible harmony, a final composition built entirely from everything lost. It's beautiful in a way that terrifies her. When it stops, the red light fades. On the tape, written in shaky ink, is a single word. Again, at sunrise, the city wakes unaware of what lingers in the static between frequencies. The detective walks toward the station, her coat catching the wind, her recorder in hand. She stops at the edge of the street as a radio plays from a nearby car, a familiar hum threading through the song. She listens, heart steady, then smiles, almost imperceptibly. Some sounds she knows now don't die, they adapt. The voice she chased has become the silence she carries, a reminder that truth isn't spoken, it's heard. As the light shifts and the world moves on, the camera lingers on her face, still listening, long after the sound has ended.